Hey, welcome to day three in getting automated clients via Facebook ads and webinar. So we're walking through each of the parts step by step. I'm kind of walking it through in various different parts in the way that I work with clients. So 2 days ago, we talked about putting out that bold promise. Yesterday, we talked about using metaphors and analogy to really build up that belief in your audience so that they can really follow along and see the visibility in terms of that bold promise. Today, we're going to go back to the introduction. Now we've kind of established our bold promise. Now that we've established our unique formula, we want to kind of backtrack and get to one of the key parts of your webinar, which is kind of the very start. How do you start to introduce yourself? How do you really get into and further explain your bold promise so that people have that curiosity to go and stay till the end of your webinar? But how do you set up your unique formula really well? And how do you give people context into who you are, what your unique formula is all about, and then further building up proof along the way. So I'm going to provide a bunch of different examples. Before I wanted to do that is kind of go back to yesterday. I talked about that unique formula. I talked about it in a little bit of detail, but I just want to show you something I meant to show you yesterday, but we can do it today. And this is basically just a past client. Like, how do we think about that overarching metaphor or analogy, and how does it actually come into practice, and what does it look like? So again, this was for a client that I had earlier this year, in that she was focused on kind of those people that were thinking, like, as they approach retirement, like, what was that second act? What was that next career that they're going to go into that they're really going to think about? So let me just share my screen here, and I'm going to walk you through a little bit about that outline, and you'll see kind of how the metaphor really came to be. I kind of teased this out a little bit yesterday, but I meant to kind of bring up the outline just to bring it to life a little bit more. So this is kind of the outline that we went through. So again, what we did is kind of, like, the first thing I did was kind of walk through, okay, anytime you bring on a new client, what is that first step that you're going to take with them? What is that first thing that's going to get them momentum? It's going to get them confidence, get them going in the right direction. So we laid out kind of step one, step two, step three. And then I went back and started to think about kind of the client journey, that the buyer's journey, in terms of, like, okay, where I am right now, sitting in the pain point of, okay, I've gotten to the end of my corporate career, but I know I just don't want to just retire from work and start hanging out by the beach. That's just not for me. I want to be able to sustain myself through some kind of volunteer opportunities, or actually start my own business, or whatever it is. So for a lot of our clients, it meant different things. So but here's kind of the overarching metaphor, and this is what my client really came up with. I kind of threw out a bunch of different ideas, and we eventually came up to, it's very much like buying a new house. And again, for this audience, that's a relevant metaphor for them in particular, because a lot of them are kind of downsizing at the same time. So a lot of their kids have gone off to college, so they're starting to think about real estate as well. So, like, combining her services with what they're thinking about as well, in terms of maybe selling their home, or at least downsizing, or maybe buying a vacation home as well, was very relevant. So that was kind of the overarching metaphor or analogy that we used, and has been really successful with her audience in terms of buying that new house. So again, it's all about kind of getting to, starting off with, like, where are they right now? Like, what is that starting point? So for this one, you're not in the, you're not in the right home. Maybe it's too big. Taking care of it is wearing you down. And it's the same thing. Again, using that analogy is very much like their corporate career. They know that they've gotten to the end of the lifespan. They know that they're ready for something new. They're just not sure what it is yet. And again, that's where a lot of fear, that's a lot of unmotivation is kind of there, and they kind of just get stuck. They're not taking action because they're not sure in what direction to take it in. And very much like the house in the same way. And then we kind of get into it. So step one was all about, what kind of living space do you want? And again, she kind of walked through, gave that example of, like, laying out that vision. Same thing with the corporate career. Like, what's that next career step? Like, let's lay out everything that you've possibly been interested in before. Like, if you could start over, like, what is that something that would get you really excited and get you moving in the right direction? And that was kind of her first step with working with clients, is they just made a giant list of things that they potentially might be interested in. That's a great way to do it. And no, like, there wasn't any, we didn't try and narrow it down at all or anything like that. It was just about like, let's get as many ideas down on paper. And then as we discuss it, as we get into step two, that's when we kind of refine it and see what's possible and see see what, brings you energy and that kind of thing. Same thing in terms of the living space. You don't want as many stairs. You don't want to drive everywhere, but you have to, you want to make sure that you have a house or a condo, buy or rent. Again, kind of going through all those different preferences. In terms of that house, again, same frame of mind they were thinking about in terms of their next career, in terms of that. So again, you can see how with the analogy, we're kind of just making it really crystal clear, like what is going to go on, like what is their experience going to be like. And again, like buying a house is something that they've done probably at least once or twice. So they're familiar with that process, and it gives them that level of confidence. Like, yeah, I can do this. Like this is not as that outcome that we talked about in the very beginning in terms of that bold promise suddenly becomes a lot more manageable. There's a lot less fear there, and they can see kind of the footsteps, and they can see the expertise that this coaching client is able to do along the way. So then we get into, step two. So now that we've had our list of preferences, we get into step two, which is looking for our dream home. So again, now we have these lists of preferences. We've started to narrow them down a little bit. That's where we can actually go out and search for like what is absolutely possible. So it might be applying for different jobs. It might be going out to volunteer opportunities and seeing what's out there. It might be starting your own business as well. So like, okay, what does my business look like? What is the focus? And again, this is where we're kind of going out there. There's no, we haven't fully defined what we want yet, but we're just going out there. We're starting to looking, maybe testing out some possibilities. There's no standard template. It's personalized to you, your personality and your dreams. So nobody's giving you like, okay, here's exactly what you have to do. And then her prospects really appreciated that because again, like it wasn't set in stone from the very beginning. They didn't have to figure it out right away. They're just trying out these various different things to kind of bridge the gap between like what their interests were at the very beginning and actually getting some real world exposure to them to say like, okay, for the next 5-10 years, like, is this something that I want to do day to day? Is this something that really does bring me energy along the way? And again, you're bringing along your checklist. As you find out different things, you can refine that vision and really get to what you're looking for. And then we get to step three. So again, you can see how each of these steps is giving people visibility on what's possible. It's kind of simplifying the whole process and, kind of knocking down a lot of those objections and questions. Like, how is this actually going to happen for me? Like, how is this coach going to help me? By just making it super simple, and they can start to visualize it along the way. Again, one of the things that we'll talk about in the introduction is kind of presenting the opportunity. Like, why is this an exciting opportunity? But like, how can they start to visualize how their life is going to change? Like, what is their new life going to look like? And how are you going to change some of those old beliefs to get them to the point where they want to get there? So again, in step three, it was all about like, okay, we've tested things out. We've tried things out. We finally have some more definitive evidence and experience in terms of what we want to go after. So now that we have more specificity, we can actually go out there and look, in this case, in the analogy, looking for that perfect home. So for this one, faith alone was not a strategy. We actually, we were looking for different strategies. And this is where a lot of the know-how from the coach and the intelligence and the strategies and the market, like, especially if they're starting their own business in the same way that, she did, she can give a lot of that expertise or find outside experts that can get them there. So again, using the analogy, you get pre-approval for your mortgage, you put your own you put your own place on the market, or even decide to sell it first. You have your plan and support system. All the pieces are in place. So you can see, especially for this solution that she was providing, where there's a lot of fear, uncertainty in each step of the process, you can see how she is customizing it for their personality, customizing it for their vision, and getting to the point where, again, by the end of step three, it's just like, wow, this is crystal clear. I have complete visibility on how she can help me, how she's going to guide me along the way. And again, we've kind of like, for a lot of these prospects, they can do that themselves, but she's done this over and over and over again. She had all these success stories of people that had gone through her process, had amazing results. They felt really confident in their path going forward, and that made a big difference as they went along. So, that's kind of just the example in terms of the webinar outline. to kind of really bring it to life, because I know the unique formula is something that it's tough to kind of visualize and conceptualize at the start. But I think, this is a great example earlier this year of how do we kind of bring it home for our audience? How do you make it really super simple so we can build up the belief that that bold promise is actually possible? I can walk them through, again, just like buying a home, we're almost taking them by the hand and letting them know, like, okay, this is exactly what we're going to do. So when they do become a client, they're super there's complete transparency, complete visibility on each of the steps that they're going to go through. Not that you're going to follow these 3 steps, to a T. There's obviously a personalization, but again, like in terms of the standard process that she has, again, she put a unique name to this process as well that build up the value of it, and got her to the point where, again, she was holding webinars before and wasn't getting, she was getting a lot of objections and questions at the end of it, like, how is this absolutely possible for me? And once she actually walked through the steps, walked through her unique formula, that's where kind of, it was kind of like flipping a switch in terms of like the webinars that she had before and the webinars that she had after. That's where, plenty of people were willing to sign up. They saw the value in her services. It wasn't even a question of how much it cost. It was just like, when can we get started? Because again, you're kind of thinking of, in your own buyer's mind, like, what do they need to know to get to the point where they're ready to sign up with me? So we're going to get into kind of the intro here, and I kind of want to break it down by various different sections. And again, I'm just going to use a diagram just to really bring it to life for you. So just give me a second to line up the diagram here. Okay, just going to share my screen again. So I'm just going to line up in terms of the various different pieces. Just to, again, this is day 3. We've kind of have a lot of moving parts, so I just want to kind of summarize it as I talk through it in terms of the moving pieces here. So like one of the key things on the one side is, like, in our intro right away, we want to have some kind of bold promise that's out there. So this is kind of getting to, like, right here, like in the first few minutes, and certainly if you can, within the first 30 to 60 seconds, to really catch their attention, want to have some kind of bold promise, goal, outcome that they're looking for. I mean, there's several different ways of doing it, but think about a sales page that would have a headline, something that's really going to catch their attention, that's going to keep their curiosity and get them kind of questioning, like, how is that absolutely possible? And something that's going to keep them to the end, something that you can walk them through that unique formula. And again, like that's kind of the huge crux. Like, so that's why I spend, that's priority number 1 for me. And that's where I'm going to spend a good deal of my time, not all my time, but that's where I'm going to spend a good deal of my time testing out various different headlines, doing research, getting success stories, talking to existing clients, getting kind of the outcomes that they want the most. We want to make sure that that really sticks out. And then I'm going to take a look at the competitors and see what promises they're making, because I don't want to make the same exact promise or anything really remotely to the promises that they have out there. I want mine to be completely differentiated. I want to be, if at all possible, kind of saying something completely different, almost like saying, like, what you're hearing over there is completely wrong, and here's why. And then in your webinar, kind of describing why all the advice you've been getting from everybody else is not working and not getting to the outcome that you're looking for. So that's really it, in terms of that first intro. And then in terms of the intro, there's several ways to do it. Like I saw a recent webinar where they actually started off not by the actual speaker starting out. What they did was, it was a recorded webinar that they're running on Evergreen, and they started with a series of different success stories, just video testimonials from clients talking about the results that they were able to get by working with the host of the webinar. So it was all about kind of the results, the amazing results they're able to get within a short period of time. And what that did is it really set up, as he got on video and kind of introduced himself and got into that bold promise. Even before he got to that bold promise, he was establishing credibility. Like, okay, this is absolutely possible. You got to hear and, you got to see and hear from his clients, hear their enthusiasm, hear, their gratitude and all those kind of things. And it's set up really well the bold promise. So even before he came on the line, he'd already built himself up a little bit before he even introduced his story. And I thought that was an effective way of doing that just within the first 30 seconds, hearing from two or three of his success stories, actually talking about the results they were able to get. There wasn't anything about the actual formula that they used or anything like that. It was just kind of putting out there, here's what I've been able to achieve within a short period of time, and it was really effective. Otherwise, the standard way of introducing yourself, especially in those first few minutes, is just really having a lot of energy and really getting people excited, especially in those first, in the first 30 to 60 seconds, especially in the first few minutes, because there's going to be, if you're not, you're going to see that potential drop off. So like for our intro, one of the things that we obviously want to do is around that kind of bold promise goal outline, but really is kind of like helping your audience kind of um, visualize the opportunity, like help them see like where they are right now and what's absolutely possible. So they are sitting at some point where again they haven't hit their potential in their business, they haven't hit their potential in their life, and they're looking for these outcomes and they're coming to this webinar as a potential solution. So at the front, let's start with all the benefits of what they're going to experience if they sign up with you. Let's start off by selling the outcome versus selling your services. That's really important. We don't really want to get into, okay, this is my coaching services and here's what you're going to get, all those kind of things. Especially in the webinar, we want to start with that bold promise, and we want to start for our audience, for them to kind of start to, again, like I call it, like future pacing is the common word that you have out there, but really helping them visualize what their life is going to look like even after they've worked with you. So what we want to give them kind of a free sample of, like, okay, once you've worked with me, like here's all the amazing things that you're going to experience. Like get them excited about that, help them to and really speak in a way that starts to help them visualize it with all their senses. They can kind of start to see it in their mind's eye. They can see how it's going to work for their own business, their own life, all those kind of things along the way. And again, use those success stories that you have, talk to your existing clients and talk about how their life has changed, not only within the specific thing that you help them with, but what are some of those ancillary benefits that they've been able to experience along the way. And let's bring them to the fore as well. And then the other part is we're going to really introduce our story. So I'll just go into the text right here. I'll just put one right here. So it really is around kind of like introducing your story. So a part of it is again, one of the effective things that I talked about on that webinar is kind of instituting success stories from the front. But like think about, especially with the coaches that I work with, their story is a big part of feeding into this bold promise and effectively getting down to this unique formula. So if I just bring it down here in terms of what I'm looking for here, so it's eventually going to get down to the unique formula, which is kind of like like section 2. So before we get into the unique formula and kind of get over here, what we have to do is, number one, help them visualize the opportunity. And this kind of feeds into the bold promise. We want to kind of expand upon that bold promise. Then we want to start to get into your story. And, the intro is a great portion to not rush through. Again, you want to have a lot of energy, but that doesn't mean that you kind of rush through it. So I see a lot of people, especially when they run a webinar for the first time, is they actually go through the webinar script and they kind of speak through it and they try and do it without even taking a breath because they think they have to have a ton of energy. They think they have to kind of just sustain that energy for a long period of time. But recognize for your audience, like especially in those first few minutes, that's where you're going to really build that know, like, and trust factor. That's where you're going to start to show them your personality and kind of bring out all the parts of your story. So with a lot of the coaches that I work with, they have been in their prospect shoes before. Like they have been through similar problems and they've been able to find that unique formula that they're now teaching now to kind of bring their prospects across and help them realize the same level of transformation stories. So again, like in telling your own story, a great way of doing it. And this is a great way. Another thing that I would kind of focus on in the intro is kind of really qualifying people. And I'll just put it here just so everything's kind of lined up. Let people know like who this is for and who isn't it for, and qualify people and let them know, like, again, if there is some drop off, let it be the people that are, they're just not the right type of client that you're looking for. They're not the type of client that you really want to work with. So make it super clear, especially as you go through your story. It's a great way of kind of qualifying people. Before we get into our bold, you've kind of captured their attention with their bold promise. Let's kind of qualify them, like, who is this for? Who isn't it for? A lot of people will do that right off the bat. I would kind of start to get into your story a little bit, get into some of those old beliefs, and your story is very much connected to this unique formula. So not only in terms of I'm just messing up the diagram here, but it's very much connected to where you are right now. So this is kind of connected very much to here. So in your story, you're going to talk through not only how you discovered your unique formula, but you're going to discover you're going to really connect with your audience and talk about like those old set of beliefs that they have, and the old set of beliefs that you had, and how you kind of got over, in finding your unique formula, you were able to change your beliefs. And in the same way, in the webinar, and kind of going through your unique formula, just like we did with the second act coach and the house, we want to get them to a new set of beliefs in terms of what's possible and how they can get to that bold promise along the way. So in terms of your story, like, one of the things that I do follow is kind of like a story structure. And I'm just going to bring this through right here. I'm just going to talk it through a little bit. Bernadette Jiwa is the one that came up with this story structure. So I just need to give credit where credit is due. And this is something that I follow a lot of the times in terms of our 5 C's framework. And this is really around kind of the hero's journey. And again, providing more about your story, especially up front, and kind of mixing in some success stories, is a really effective way to kind of meet your audience where they are, give them hope of what's possible. So in talking through your transformation, you're going to give them hope that in working with you, that you can get them a similar type of transformation. But it also just it's kind of an effective way of pre-selling. So again, as they get on the line, as they hear your story kind of step by step, they're going to see parts of their story kind of play out as well. And it's a great way, when you do get on a sales call with them, there is already that know, like, and trust factor. You don't have to do a lot of selling. Again, it's a lot of the qualifying and just making sure that they're the right fit for you. So again, in terms of this intro, let's kind of walk you through kind of the 5 C's. So like, number 1 is kind of like a little bit of backstory around, so you are the hero in this story. So like, introduction to the hero's world. So like, before you actually even found your unique formula, or even before you had your transformation, like, what was going on in your life? And this is a great this is a great point to kind of talk through and kind of meet your audience exactly where they were. Like, talk through like how you were going through similar type problems, and and the best way to do that is to kind of share specific stories. So like, what were some of those trigger events for you? What were those specific moments where you have a very shared experience in terms of what problems that you have, that the audience has? So again, your audience isn't in pain 24/7. There's specific events where they feel their pain points or struggles, or they feel kind of stuck in certain instances, whether it's meeting at work, or maybe something with their spouse, or whatever it is. Like, certain portions of the day, they are going to feel a lot of urgency to start to get a solution that you offer. So again, we want to kind of agitate a lot of those emotions, kind of put them in the right frame of mind for hearing our solution, by stirring up some of those emotions and getting some urgency to potentially solving their problem today. Again, if they're not in the right frame of mind, if their problem is kind of like priority 4, 5, or 6 in terms of their own head, and you haven't stirred up those emotions, that's when they'll say like, oh, that solution looks great, but maybe I'll handle it 6 months from now. I've got other priorities that I really want to bring up. So by really telling your story, and by sharing why you've been in similar situations to them, and really stirring up some of those emotions around their problem, their struggle, whatever outcome that they're looking for, you're going to put them in the right frame of mind to hear your unique formula, to hear your offer, to take that next step along the way. Again, we're going to get to the point where you're going to talk about the problems that you had. You're going to talk about those specific issues, the pain points that you had. There's going to be some type of catalyst that comes through. So talk about how, again, and these are all about, as you tell your story, think about those kind of critical moments in your life where everything changed, and this is really what it's all about. again, I kind of think of like Marvel superheroes. You have all those movies out there. You have this superhero that is introduced in the very start of the movie, and something changes, like a villain comes in, or you get they tease out some kind of villain coming through, and that's kind of the catalyst or event that kind of upends your world. And in the same way, this webinar is kind of upending your audience's world. So they've been dealing with a problem maybe for years or decades, and they haven't been able to find a solution. They're coming to your webinar, and this might be the event that changes everything for them. So put that into context about like where did your life change? What was the momentum for you to start to find a solution in your own life? And again, to stir up some emotions as we go along. Again, it wasn't like, again, think about your own journey. It wasn't all just, okay, I found a solution, I solved it right away, and everything was gravy. There was some obstacles along the way. So maybe you went on this long search for a solution, just like your audience is. So again, your audience might have been searching for a solution for their problems for a long period of time. So by talking about all the different struggles that you went through, and this is a great place to kind of talk through, like in terms of the options or the menu of options that your audience has in terms of what they can try, what can they go out there and do, and what are the things that you tried. And you can talk through like, okay, you're considering maybe doing this, but I tried that before, and here's why it didn't work. So what you can do is, before you even get into your unique formula, you can kind of set up like, maybe you're considering doing this, but I've actually already done that before, and here's why it didn't work for me, and here's why that is flawed. And again, kind of knocking down old beliefs of kind of considering like, okay, this is going to work for me, and kind of letting it go. And to the point where you can kind of go through the menu of options that your audience has, and you can let them know like why each of them is flawed. And that really sets up your unique formula very well, because it shows that you've kind of thought critically about it. You've tried these other things. You've kind of explained why they're flawed, and you have set up a unique formula that kind of accelerates their progress, but also makes up for all the flaws of all those other options. And it gets to the point where like your audience kind of sees like, in the menu of options that I thought I had before this webinar, there's only one clear one. And that really sets up your offer that you get towards the end of the webinar, and that we'll talk about in the next 2 days. Like, how do you set up your offer really well? By just knocking down all those other options and making it really clear that there's only one real choice. Like it's either, sign up for my offer and get that outcome that you want the most, or kind of continue to struggle with this along the way. So again, making it really clear about what the pathways are, so that your option just becomes the only option for them if they want to move forward. And again, you get to some kind of, to some consequence. Again, this is where you find that unique formula. This is where you discover it. This is where you hired a mentor and they taught you the unique formula and you adjusted it over time. This is where something happened in your life and you made a discovery, like whatever it is. Again, think of those really specific moments. Take your audience there. Again, you don't have to do this over a long period of time. This doesn't have to be half hour, 45 minutes. You can just take your audience to specific moments and talk through what is your journey. Again, your journey is going to be very much like theirs in many instances. If it isn't, this is where you can institute some of your success stories. Like if you haven't been in the same shoes as your audience, gone through the same problems, that's perfectly fine. Let's take one of your success stories that you've had. Let's use that as an example and use kind of their story as a way of showing how you're a guide along the way. Again, if you want to follow a similar type of structure, that's kind of the way to do it. So again, as you get results, you can modify the structure. So again, we still have, the hero just becomes your customer or your client. They have a problem. They meet you, the guide, gives them a plan. So again, in this case, your unique formula, and that sets that up really well. That calls them action that helps to avoid failure. And then we get to, again, the results, and that ends in success. So you can see how it's just really instituting. The only difference is really introducing you as the guide and kind of setting up and teasing out your unique formula. So in your intro, you're just going to really tease out that unique formula. And then you're going to spend some time in that next section. And again, using your analogy, using your metaphor to really bring it to life for people, walking people through, again, step 1, step 2, step 3, so they can see how that bold promise is really possible and get to the point where they are ready for that. So again, that's the unique formula, is kind of step 1, step 2, step 3. So again, in your intro, the key portion, the key portions. And again, you can have other things, but like, what are the things that you should do? Obviously, the first thing is kind of like putting out that bold promise, putting out that goal, outcome, whatever it is, to capture their attention. Again, make it as specific as possible. Want to help them kind of visualize the opportunity, like help them almost see like like help them kind of visualize they've already worked with you, like this is how their life has changed, again, and get a lot of this language from your success stories. And then we're going to get into your story. We're going to build up your credibility. We're going to connect with your audience and let them know why, either you or one of your success stories has been in their shoes before, why, like talking through that transformation to let them know what's possible. In the same way, we're kind of teasing out our unique formula. So they're like, we're setting the seeds for, and kind of setting the scene for that unique formula that you're going to cover a little bit later. And that's going to only breed more and more curiosity. And we're going to qualify people. So we're going to let them know who this is for, who it isn't for. And this is a great way to make sure that, again, the people that you get on the sales calls at the end of the day, we don't want to waste their time. You don't want to waste your time. I only want people that fit a certain criteria, and hopefully you have a good idea of what that is, and letting people know, like, okay, if you're looking for a quick fix, like this probably isn't it. But if you're willing to put in the work, follow my unique formula, actually take action, this is going to be for you. So again, a lot of people try and do that qualifying up front, and that's where they kind of lose their audience. I would really definitely, help them visualize the opportunity, put out your bold promise, kind of introduce yourself, let the audience kind of know, like, and trust you, build up that personality. And this is certainly not something to rush through. Again, don't go through a full-throated intro and have tons of energy, but kind of rush through it. Make sure you're pausing. If you need a drink of water, feel free to take that time to get a drink of water. Have that energy, but don't rush through it. Really build that connection point, because if people aren't connected, number one, to your bold promise at the start, but also for you as the webinar host. And this is why in the intro, like, a lot of people will just use slides and not show themselves. If you have the confidence to get on screen and actually show a visual of you and be on video, even if it's you have slides on the side and a little window of you, just like I'm doing right now, it just allows people to build that connection. They can see you, they can hear you, they can hear your tone of voice. All those kind of things just makes that connection really possible. So if you get on screen, at least for the intro, that's really powerful. And it's something that, a lot of people are, there's a lot of fear around. So I see a lot of webinars where people kind of just hide behind those webinar slides and you don't really actually get to meet them. And it's just kind of that audio. If as much, if you can, especially for the intro, if you can get on the screen, if you can kind of demonstrate and show your energy as well as allow them to hear it, it makes a big difference in terms of that overall connection. So that's the intro. Over the next 2 days, we're going to go through those final sections in terms of the close, handling objections, actually presenting your offer. And that's kind of the extension of, once you go through your unique formula, it really sets up well, like, okay, this is how you could potentially work with me, whether it's going to an application in the sales call, or maybe potentially a membership or a course or whatever it is, sets it up really well. I'll go through those different scenarios. Obviously, it's a little bit different if you're going to a application or a sales page versus selling something directly. So I'll go through the different scenarios there. But really important to, again, have that bold promise, have that unique formula. We talked a little bit about that today, and kind of bringing forward like a metaphor and analogy to really bring it to your audience's attention. And then getting into going back to the intro, very much connected. So starting off with that bold promise, helping your audience kind of visualize what's possible, get them excited, get enough curiosity going. And that's really going to sustain them to stay till the end, because they really want that solution that you're going after. And really stirring up those emotions again with your own story, with the qualifications, put them in the right frame of mind to actually hear your offer along the way. We want to kind of, again, especially if you've been through similar things as your audience, you've been through those pain points and you've been through on the other side of that transformation, take us back to those emotional moments where your audience kind of struggling in that same way, and get them feeling a bit of urgency for finding a solution versus something that 6 months from now or a year from now might be possible. So, kind of a little bit longer in terms of the explanation here, but obviously the intro is very important to, sustain people's attention and get people to the end. If this was helpful, hit that like button below on whatever you're watching it. And let me know in terms of your story as you think about it in the comments. Like, how would you think about your hero's journey, and what were some of those specific moments, maybe in terms of the pain points that you're dealing with, but also what was your transformational moment? Kind of share that below in the comments. Check out my opt-in here, fullconfidenceads.com. It's great to have a great webinar script, but if you don't have enough people coming to it and you don't have the right messaging, that's where you're going to fall down. So Full Confidence Ads is all about writing the Facebook ad copy that's going to capture your audience's attention, and actually how to create and manage those ads within Business Manager, and then how to optimize those ads over time using a simple 5-step process. So check that out. It's a free video training that walks you through step by step on how to do it. And with that, I'll see you in future lives this week.